50 Lessons on Principles of Belief for Youths. Author Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi. Publisher Ahlul Bayt World Assembly. Preface. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. The precious legacy left behind by the Holy Prophet's household, Ahlul Bayt, may peace be upon them all, and their followers, preservation of this legacy from the menace of extinction, is a perfect example for all encompassing school, madrasa, that embraces all the different branches of Islamic knowledge. This school has been able to train many talented personalities by quenching them with this gushing fountain. This school has given scholars to the Muslim Ummah, who, by following the Prophet's household, peace be upon them, have done their best in order to clear away the doubts and skepticisms put forth by any various creeds and intellectual currents, both inside and outside Muslim society. Throughout past centuries, they have presented the firmest answers and solutions to these doubts. Anchored to the responsibilities upon its shoulders, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam World Assembly has embarked on defending the sanctity of Risala message and its authenticity, beliefs, truths which have always been opposed by the chiefs and leaders of anti-Islamic sects, religions, and trends. In this sacred path, the Assembly regards itself as a follower of the upright pupils of the school of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, those who have already been ready to refute those accusations and calumnies, and have tried to be always in the front line of the struggle on the basis of expediencies of time and space. The experiences in this field, which contain the books of scholars belonging to the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, are unique in their own right. It is because these experiences have been based upon knowledge, ilm, and the preeminence of intellect and reasoning, and at the same time they are devoid of blind prejudices, of whims and caprices. These experiences address experts, scholars, and thinkers in a manner that appeals to healthy minds and pure human natural disposition, fitra. In a bid to assist those who are in quest of truth, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam World Assembly has endeavored to enter a new phase of these worthy experiences by conducting research and translating the works of contemporary Shia writers or those who, through divine guidance, have embraced this noble school. The Assembly is also engaged in the study and publication of the valuable works of the pious predecessors and outstanding Shia personalities, so that those who search for the truth may quench their thirst from this palatable fountain which the school of the Prophet's household offers to the entire world. It is hoped that the dear readers will not deprive the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam World Assembly of their valuable opinions, suggestions, and constructive criticism in this arena. We also invite scholars, translators, and other institutions to assist us in propagating pure Muhammadan Islam. We ask God the Exalted to accept this humble effort and enhance it further under the auspices of His vicegerent on earth, and give us success with Mahdi. May Allah the Exalted expedite His glorious advent. It is appropriate here to express our utmost gratitude to Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi for writing the book, and to Dr. Mahmoud Farooq Pei for translating this work. We should also like to thank colleagues who took part in accomplishing this task, especially the staff of the Translation Office for fulfilling their responsibilities. Cultural Affairs Department, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam World Assembly. Prelude. The most silent feature of our Islamic revolution is its Islamic nature, and the most prominent characteristic of Islam is its personality-building aspect based on divine standards. Our aim is to prepare an interesting, logic-based, and rigorous collection of papers for the general public. On the other hand, for the youth in particular, so that they could, under existing Islamic conditions, build a sturdy faith which could in the long run influence their behavior and also be used as an impetus for further studies. This collection, which has been prepared with special precision and initiatives, could have the way for those who need to acquire the Islamic principles and faith for both their personal interests or for instruction. This collection has been written and prepared by Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi, a profound pioneer and initiator of religious discussions in the Qom seminary for the last 40 years. The instructions who wish to teach these letters to their students should make note of the following points. These lessons should be accompanied with historic evidence and interesting observations based on current affairs. The students' preferences and previous knowledge should be considered in teaching these lessons. A question and answer approach should be used during instruction. A relevant Quranic verse in which the lectures is based should be elegantly written on the bond, and the students should be presented with a literal translation of the verse under consideration. This will lay the foundation for their familiarity with the Holy Quran. It is recommended that the relevant verse be recited by one and repeated by the students in unison. If it is not necessary to cover one lecture in one sitting, it could be covered within 2 sessions. There are subtle and detailed points hidden in each lecture. The lecturer is well advised to study the lecture beforehand in order to bring up these points during the presentation. These lectures are prepared for the students of junior high school and high school for both boys and girls, and for the general public who wish to improve their knowledge of the principles of the Islamic faith. Giving prizes to those who successfully pass the exam based on these lectures is highly recommended. Students who are exposed to these lectures might have some theological questions in mind. The following sources could be used as references in order to arrive at appropriate answers: The Creator of the Universe, In Search of Allah, and Religious Questions and Answers. Part 1. God and His Attributes. Lesson 1. Why do we think about God and study ways of knowing the Creator of the universe? The love to be informed about how and know the world is deep inside every one of us. We all want to know that in truth, that this elevated heaven with its beautiful stars, this extensive earth with its heart-rendering views, these various creatures, beautiful birds, various kinds of fish, the seas and flowers, the blossoms, plants, abundant trees whose tops reach towards the heaven, did all of these things come into being of their own free will, or were they all of these wonderful forms pointed by an expert, a powerful painter? Beyond all of this, the first question which comes to mind for all of us is, where did we come from? Where are we? Where are we going? If we know the answers to these 3 questions, how happy will we be? That is, if we know where our life began and where it will finally end, and what duties we have now, our searching spirit tells us, you must not sit quietly until the answers come. It often happens that in an automobile accident, a person is injured and becomes unconscious, and for his treatment, they take him to the hospital when his condition has improved a bit, and when he awakens, the first thing which he asks of those around him is, "Where am I? Why did you bring me here? When can I leave here?" All of these questions show that a person cannot remain indifferent and not ask these questions. Thus, the first thing which sends us looking for God and understanding of the creation of the whole world of existence is our very thirsty spirit of search. Second, a sense of thankfulness. Pretend that you have been invited to a very important affair and all means of convenience have been provided for you, but because you have been invited through your brother, you do not know the host well. The first thing you will want to do when you enter the gathering is to find the host to thank him. When we look at the widespread created world and the multiple blessings which have been provided for us: eyes which can see, ears which can hear, sufficient intelligence, various physical and psychological abilities, various means of living and for earning our livelihood. We automatically begin to think about trying to know He who has given us all of these blessings, and even though He does not need our thanks, we still thank Him, and until we do this we are unhappy with ourselves and feel we have not done a duty. This is another reason why we begin to search, to come to know God. 3. The bond between things to our benefit and things to harm with this example. Pretend that we are going on a journey, and we reach a crossroad in which there is a great deal of commotion. Everyone warns us not to stop at this crossroad because there is a great danger. Each group invites us to go its way. One group says the best way is to go east. Another says go west is the best road. The third group invites us to a road or a way which is between the other two, saying this is the only way of saving yourself from danger and reaching your home safely. This is the way that will give you happiness and security and be the place of refuge for you. Would we allow ourselves to choose a way without study? Will our mind allow us to stop there and not choose any way? Clearly not. Rather, our mind and our wisdom tells us to begin immediately to study and research, to listen to the words of each group carefully and accept whichever way has the most correct signs, speaks the truth, and has convincing reasons for taking that way. Having assured ourselves of the right way, we take it and move forward. In life, in this world, also, we have such a condition. Different religion and school of thoughts invite us to take their way. But as our fate, our fortune and misfortune, our progress and backwardness depends upon our study and making the best choice. We are obliged to think about this and prevent ourselves from falling into misfortune, corruption, and difficulties. This is yet another reason which invites us to search for the Creator of the world. The Holy Quran says, "So give good tidings to my servants, those who listen to the sayings and follow the best of it." Think and answer. 1. Other than what your mother and father have told you about God, have you seriously thought about Him? 2. Can you say what the difference is between searching for God and knowing God? 3. Have you ever felt a deep sense of spiritual love for God when you have whispered your prayer to Him? Lesson 2. The signs of God in our daily life. Knowing God and the progress of science. Pretend that a friend has come from a trip and has brought a book as a present for you. He says that it is an excellent book because the author of this book is full of information by a very great scholar who is accurate and expert and is a genius in his own field. You will most certainly not study this book carelessly. Rather, you will concentrate on every sentence and even the choice of words made, and if there be sentence there that you do not understand, perhaps you will spend hours and even days, whenever you can, studying it until the meaning of it becomes clear to you. Why? Because the author of this book is not a normal average person, but rather a great scholar who considers every word he uses carefully. But if the opposite were true, and they had said to you, "This book may appear to be beautiful and pleasing on the outside, but the author is not very literate, and he has no base in science and has not taken any care," it is clear that you will only quickly glance at the book, and whenever you found something unclear in it, you would say, "This is because the author was uninformed, and it is a waste of time for a person to study this." The world of creatures is like a great book in which every creature forms a word, a sentence, and that. From the point of view of a person who worships God, every atom of this universe is worthy of study. A person who has faith in the ray of light of worshipping God will make use of a special sense of curiosity in studying the secrets of creation, and it is this very fact which helps science and human knowledge to progress. Because he knows that the creator of the universe has endless knowledge and power in everything he does is based on wisdom and a philosophy. Thus, he studies with greater care, more profoundly in order to be able to understand the secrets better. But a materialist has no reason to discover the secrets of creation, for he believes that nature is senseless. If we look at the work of a materialist scholar, it is in some rank because he accepts God but calls him nature. Why? Because he accepts in an order and a program in nature. 2. Knowing God, endeavoring, and hope. Whenever a difficult and complicated event takes place in the life of a human being, whenever all doors are somehow closed, one senses weakness, hopelessness, and loneliness when confronted by these difficulties. A person with faith in God then seeks his help, by which he gives. A person who has faith in God does not see himself or herself as being alone or powerless. He or she does not despair. He or she does not sense weakness or inability, because God is above all difficulties and everything is easy for him. With hope and his kindness, support, and help, he or she will struggle against the difficulty and will use all of his or her energies. With love and hope, one will continue his or her endeavors and efforts and will overcome the difficulty. Yet, faith in God is a great place of refuge for a human being. Faith in God is the sustenance of perseverance, steadfastness. Faith in God always keeps hope in hearts alive. Because of this, individuals with faith never attempt to commit suicide, because attempts of suicide come from despair, a complete lack of hope, and a feeling of having failed. But individuals with faith neither lose hope nor the sense failure. 3. Knowing God and the sense of responsibility. We know a doctor who, when poor people visit him, not only does he not get money from them for the visit, but he gives them money and drugs, and if he senses a danger for that person, he will stay all night in his home. These are people who worship God and have faith. But we also know a doctor who, until the money of the visit is not paid, will not take the first step for the sick person because he does not have a strong faith. A person who has strong faith, no matter what his or her profession is, senses responsibility, knows his or her duties, does good, readily forgives, and constantly sees a spiritual policeman within his or her soul, watches over one's deeds. But people who lack faith and are selfish and dangerous, people who have no sense of responsibility. Oppression, suppression, and aggression against the rights of others is easy for them, and they are less prepared to do good. Number 4. Knowing God and peacefulness. Psychologists say that mental and physiological diseases are greater in our time than in any other. They say that one of the factors is anxiety over future events, anxiety over deaths, anxiety over war, and anxiety, fear, and failure. They add, among the things which can take anxiety away from a person's spirit is faith in God. Because whenever an anxiety wants to penetrate one's spirit, faith in God pushes it away. A God who is kind, a God who helps one meet one's needs. A God who is aware of his servants' condition, and if they turn towards him, he helps them and frees them from anxiety. Because of this, a real believer always has a sense of peacefulness, and no anxiety exists within his or her spirit. Whatever such a person does is for God. Even if one suffers a loss, one seeks its replacement from him. Such a person even enters the war front with a smile. The Holy Quran says, "It is those who believe and confuse not their belief with oppression that are truly in peacefulness, for they are on right guidance." Think and answer. Number 1. Do you recall the fate of the people in the past which the Quranic verse refers to? Number 2. Do you know why some individuals who pretend to have faith in God are morally corrupt and none of the four effects mentioned above can be found in them? Lesson 3. Two clear ways of knowing God. From the earliest of times until today, books have been written about coming to know God, and a great deal has been said by scholars and non-scholars. Each one chooses a way in order to come to understand this issue, but from among all of the ways, there are two ways which can help us to grow near to this great creator of the universe. First, an inward way, the closest way. Second, an outward way, the clearest way. With the first way, we get in touch with our deep inner self, and we hear the cry of monotheism from within the depths of ourselves. With the second way, we explore the expansive created world, and we see the signs of the Creator in all creatures and in the heart of every atom. Each one of these two ways requires a great deal of explanation, but what we will try to do is briefly study each of these two ways. Number 1, the inward way. Let us think about the following. 1. Scholars say that every human being who thinks, from whatever class or race one be if left alone, receives no special training, not even hears the words of people who worship God, nor the words of materialists. That person will naturally become aware of a force of power which is above nature and which rules all of the world. In the corners of one's heart and spirit, one will sense a very subtle sound which is full of kindness and at the same time clear and firm, which calls one towards the great source of the universe and the power that we call God. This is that very pure, divinely created human nature of people. 2. It is possible that one becomes occupied with the commotion in the material world and one's daily life and the lights and attraction of life, and one may temporarily neglect to hear the sound, but when one finds oneself facing problems and difficulties, whenever a natural catastrophe like a flood or an earthquake or a hurricane comes, yes, at this time when one is curtailed from all means of material life, and when one finds no place of refuge, his inner sounds gain strength. One senses that within one's self a power is calling one, a power which is superior to all forces, a secret force, and all difficulties and problems even seem simple before it. It is rare to find a person who in such difficulties does not automatically turn to God. It is this issue which shows how close we are to Him and how close He is to us. He is in our spirit and our very soul. Of course, the cry of instinct nature is always within a person, but at times like this, it finds greater force. Our history shows that even the powerful rulers who at the time of peace and calm refused to even mention the name of God, when the basis of their power began to shake, and they see that they are about to lose all of their powers, they turn to God and they hear a voice of their divinely created nature. History tells us that when Pharaoh saw that he was drowning in the waves of the sea, he said, "I confess that there is no God but the great God of Moses." This cry came from his soul. Not only Pharaoh, but all people who are in a state of condition, like he was, cry out the same thing he did. 4. If you study the real reasons for this, you will agree that a light shines from there which calls you to God. Perhaps there have been times when you have met with difficulties and problems, and all of the usual ways of solving problems do not work. At the moment, most certainly you have seen that there is a force in the world which can easily solve it. At the moment, a hope mixed with love fills your spirit and soul, and it removes the clouds of darkness from your soul, from our soul. Yeah, this is the closest way which a person can take to God. Only one question. We know that this question may arise for some of you. Does this possibility not exist, that based upon what we have been taught by our environment, our father and mother, at sensitive moments we begin to think that we should ask God for help? We know that you're right and correct in asking this question, but we have a very interesting answer which we will give in the next lesson. The Holy Quran says, "Now, if they embark on a boat, they call on God, making their devotion sincerely and exclusively to Him, but when He has delivered them safely to dry land, behold, they give a share of their worship to others." Think and answer. Number 1. Try to memorize the surah number, verse number, and meaning of the word-to-word translation and gradually become familiar with the language of the Holy Quran. Number 2. Has a complicated problem ever arisen for you which has no solution seemed available for you except the kindness of God the Almighty? Write or tell about it briefly. Number 3. Why is this way called the closest way? Lesson 4. An answer to an important question. Question. In the previous lesson we realized or recognized that we always hear the voice of monotheism, tawheed, and worship of God from within our souls, and especially at times of difficulty. This voice becomes stronger and clearer, and we naturally begin to think about God and we seek His help for kindness. Here it is possible that this question arises that this inner voice, which we call the voice of our God-given nature, fitra, is the result of things which we have heard from our environment and our mother and father have told us, or from school, and it has become very normal and common for us. Answer. The answer to this requires a brief introduction. Customs change. We cannot find a custom which has not changed throughout history among all nations. Thus, when we see that this is something which exists among all nations, has existed at all times and during all ages, without exception, we should realize that its roots are in fitra, and that it is woven into a spirit and soul of human being. For instance, the love of a mother for a child. This can in no way be said to come from propaganda or habit of custom, because in no tribe or nation or at any time or age can you see that a mother does not love her child. Of course, it is possible that a mother, because of her mental disturbance, do away with herself, or a father during the age of ignorance in Arabia, a time before the appearance of Islam, buried his girl children alive because his thoughts were wrong and based on superstitious, but these were very rare cases. Looking at this introduction, recalling how people in the past and in the present worship God, we see as this lesson is a little bit more difficult. Please pay careful attention. Number 1. As stated by sociologists and historians, there has been no time in history when belief in God and faith did not exist among people. Rather, in every age and time and at all moments of this world, some form of belief existed, and this itself it is clear reason why the worship of God is from the depths of the spirit and its source is fitra of human beings. Not that it is a result of customs we have accepted, because if it were the consequences of habit and custom, it would not be so extensive and eternal. We even have rules which show that tribes who lived before written history began in some kind of belief system. Of course, there is no doubt that at times when people had forgotten God as being who is above nature, they searched for Him and looked for Him among creatures in nature, and they made idols for themselves of things in nature. But with the development of thought, human beings gradually were able to see the truth, stop worshipping idols which were material creatures, and become familiar with the one God. 2. Some of the well-known psychologists clearly and directly say that the human spirit or soul has 4 senses. First, the sense of knowledge, which sends a person after science and knowledge and makes one's spirit thirsty for knowledge, whether or not this has any material benefit. Second, the sense of goodness, which is the source for moral and human issues in the world of humanity. Third, the sense of beauty, which is the source of poetry and literature and art in the real sense. Fourth, the sense of belief, which invites the human being to come to know God and to implement His commands. In this way, we see that the sense of worship is one of the senses which, with the deepest roots of the spirit, that is, they are never separate from each other. 3. In our future lesson, we will see how most materialists even admit to the existence of God, even though they do not mention His name and instead refer to nature, or give Him other names, but qualities are given to nature which are in fact qualities of God. For instance, they say if nature has given 2 kidneys to human beings, it was because it knew that if one of these failed, the other would continue life, etc. Does this explanation hold for a nature which lacks awareness and consciousness? Or is this not a reference to the all-knowing and infinite God, but calling Him nature? We can conclude from what has been said that a love for God has always existed in us and will always continue. Faith in God is an eternal flame which warms our heart and spirit. In order to come to know God, we are not obliged to take a long and complicated way. We quickly turn inward and see we have faith in Him. The Holy Quran says, "We're closer to the human being than his jugular vein." Think and answer. Number 1. Write several examples of customs and several examples of things which are part of our God's given nature, fitrat. Number 2. Why do ignorant people turn to idol worship? Number 3. Why do materialists refer to God as nature? Lesson 5. A True Story. We have said that in the depths of the spirit of those who deny God with their tongue, a faith in God exists. There is no doubt that victories and successes, especially for individuals with few possibilities, develop pride, and this very pride becomes the source of their forgetfulness to the point where often a person even forgets his or her own opinions. But the moment that a storm of difficulties throw their life into chaos and a strong wind of difficulties attack that person from all sides, the curtains of pride and selfishness moves away from their eyes, and divinely created nature, fitrat, and monotheism, the belief that God is one, appears. History gives many examples of individuals who were like this, whose lives were full of deceit. There was a minister who was very strong and powerful in his age. He had taken control of most of the powers, and no one opposed him. One day, he entered a meeting in which a group of religious scholars were present. He turned to them and said, "For how long will you continue to say that God exists? I have many reasons to prove otherwise." He said this with special pride, as the scholars who were present knew that he was not a reasonable or logical person, and that power and strength had made him so proud that no words of truth would affect him. They ignored him and remained silent, a meaningful and humble silence. This event passed. After a time, the minister insulted someone. The ruler of the time had him arrested and thrown into jail. One of the scholars who were present at the gathering thought to himself that the time to awaken him had come. Now that he has gotten off the horse of pride and the curtain of self-interest has moved away from his eyes, and the sense of accepting the truth was awakened in him, if he contacts him and gives him words of advice, it may produce good results. He received permission to visit him, and he went to the prison. As he neared him, he saw that he was in a room all alone, walking back and forth and thinking that he was recalling a poem which said, We are all like drawings or paintings of a lion which are painted or drawn on a flag. When the wind blows, it moves and perhaps even attacks, but in reality it has nothing from itself. Its strength is the wind which gives it power. We also, as we gain more power, have nothing from ourselves. It is God who has given the strength to us, and wherever He wills, He can take it from us. The above-mentioned scholar saw that under these conditions, not only does he not deny the existence of God, but he has become ardently aware of God. After greeting him, he said, "Do you recall how you said you have many reasons for the non-existence of God? I have come to answer these many reasons with just one response. God is He who, with such ease, took your power away from you." He hung his head in shame and did not answer, because he knew that he had been wrong and saw the light of God within himself. The Holy Quran says, "We took the Israeli tribes across the sea. Pharaoh and his hosts followed them in pride and insolence. At length, when overwhelmed with the flood, he said, 'I believe that there is no God except Him whom the Israeli tribes believe in. I am of those who submit.' Muslimin." Think and answer. Number 1. Describe the consequences of the true story in several lines. Number 2. Why are the Israeli tribe called Israeli tribe? Number 3. Who was Pharaoh? Why did he live? What claims did he make?